had a high-grade malignant brain tumor. She had no possibility of survival on a statistical basis.
Basically told me to get my affairs in order.
A terrible prognosis.
It was pretty devastating. I was just determined I was going to be one of those people in that 1%.
I can't explain the fact that she's still alive.
Welcome to The Incurables. I'm Don Wildman. Cheryl Clark had always been an exceptional person whose adventurous spirit illuminated her life and touched those around her. Then one day, Cheryl woke up with paramedics hovering over her as they rushed her to the emergency room. In order to come through this experience, Cheryl, a seasoned athlete, would have to face the hardest challenge of her life.
There's this time bomb ticking away in my head. That boom finally made itself known in October of 1997.
I received a telephone call from Hilton Head Emergency Room that they had a lady there who had passed out and fallen off a horse and had sustained a spine fracture, and they had also done a CAT scan because she was a trauma victim, and it looked like she had a brain tumor as well.
It wasn't something I was expecting. I was healthy, I was 48 years old. I'd never suffered a headache in my life.
I don't think anybody involved in her treatment expected anything more than a year or two of survival.
And I just didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to, spend my time and my energy worrying about something, because I know positive thinking can bring about positive results, or that's what I believe anyway.
Very early on, while growing up in Michigan, Cheryl made it clear that she would carve her own path. Her passion was basketball, and she was never afraid of a little competition. In fact, she sought it out.
I recall seeing Cheryl shooting hoops all the time with the boys in the neighborhood, and they loved it because she was actually competition for them. Cheryl was outgoing and sure of herself and friendly, loving. Cheryl's one of the most loving people I've ever known.
It was my senior year in high school that I came across an article in a magazine about a professional women's basketball team.
Cheryl jumped at the chance to keep playing ball and get paid for it, so she tried out for the All-American Redheads.
We traveled around the country playing against men's basketball teams, much like the Harlem Globetrotters. So we did put on a show, but we were serious basketball players also.
The whole town was abuzz when Cheryl got the call to go with the Redheads. She was very proud of what she was doing, but it didn't make her feel like she was above anybody for it.
My basketball career was really the highlight of my life. I mean, talk about living a dream, from the time I was 20 years old to the time I was 32, basically.
Her success on the court garnered Cheryl some well-deserved notoriety.
Being inducted into the Sports Hall of Fame was like a dream come true. But I have to say, of all the moments in my life, where I'm most proud of is probably my college graduation.
Cheryl had become the first person in her family to graduate from college, but her achievement was bittersweet because by that time, both her parents had died of cancer.
Actually, when I got the diploma in my hand, I looked up in the air and I said, "I got it, Mom. I got it, Dad." That was the proudest moment.
Cheryl lived throughout the country over the next 10 years. She worked for a pro tennis league in Chicago and coached basketball in Wisconsin, finally settling in Santa Cruz, California. No matter where Cheryl went, she was involved with fitness.
I was healthy and I was 46 years old. Everything was just falling into place. And yet there's this time bomb ticking away in my head that, boom, finally made itself known in October of 1997.
Brain tumors can develop undetected over a period of months and even years. Cheryl had no symptoms whatsoever.
My friend and I went to vacation at Hilton Head, South Carolina. And we were just having a great vacation. We were into about the third or fourth day of the vacation. We had been riding bikes on the island. We went swimming in the ocean. And then we decided to rent horses and ride along the beach. We were having a great time, and it was a beautiful day. And about a couple more steps that the horse took, the fireworks were going off in my head. That's all I can explain it. Bright, bright, and then boom. Evidently, I blacked out, fell off the horse. I don't even remember that because I don't remember hitting the ground.
Cheryl does recall a very clear and surreal vision while she was unconscious.
I looked out and I was seeing two people walking toward me and I couldn't make out who they were till they got right up next to me. And it was my mother and my father, who had both passed away years and years ago. And they were saying to me, no, no, not now, not now, go back, go back. And right after that is when I woke up.
The impact from her fall severely injured Cheryl's spine and ribs. Even more life-threatening at the time was the trauma she suffered internally.
My lungs were starting to fill up with blood, and they were like at the level where if they don't do something immediately, I could just basically drown in my own blood. I mean, I wouldn't be able to breathe. It was the most painful thing I've ever experienced in my life. It was just excruciating, and yet it saved my life.
I was on call, and I received a telephone call from Hilton Head Emergency Room that they had a lady there who had, they thought, passed out and fallen off a horse and had sustained a spine fracture, had some rib fractures, and they had also done a CAT scan because she was a trauma victim, and it looked like she had a brain tumor as well.
Further tests confirmed a frighteningly large mass in the right temporal lobe.
How could I have a brain tumor? I mean, I've never had a headache, you know? I've never had a headache in my life. How did this thing grow to be the size of a lemon? I mean, it was 4 by 6 centimeters. It was the last thing I ever would have expected.
On the MRI scan, it looked like a very serious tumor. It didn't look like it was going to be a benign lesion at all.
The doctor came into my room to tell me that I had broken, you know, my back at the 8th thoracic vertebrae and that I had a brain tumor.
I told her that both were going to need operative intervention.
He said to me, Miss Clark, if you're going to have a brain tumor, you picked a good place to have it. It's in the right temporal lobe, right above your right ear there. We'll go in, we'll take it out, and we'll fix you up. And then he says to me, if you're going to break your back, you picked a good place to break it. He says, it's right in the middle of your back, and so we'll go in there and we'll fix that up. He was very positive, and that just set me at ease. It really did.
She seemed to have a pretty good attitude about it. She accepted what I was saying, and she understood what I was saying, fortunately. But she didn't break down. She was very matter-of-fact, and she, to me, looked like she was ready and willing to go ahead and accept this and deal with it and fight this.
Her friend actually called me, but then I talked to Cheryl also. When she told me that it was a brain tumor and they thought it was cancerous and that she was told she had 6 months to live, I just thought to myself, well, they don't know Cheryl. I won't give up hope, and I know she wouldn't. When I hung up the phone, I cried like a baby and said to my husband, you know, oh my God, I might lose Cheryl.
At about 6 days after her admission, we took her to the operating room and did a craniotomy for the tumor.
There was some concern going in for my brain surgery, thinking, when I come out of this surgery, am I going to be able to talk? Am I going to be able to recognize people?
There was simply no way to know if Cheryl would emerge from her surgeries as the same vibrant, spirited woman she had always been. This would be the toughest opponent she had ever faced.
She was in bed for a week or two and then had to be rehabilitated. She had to start walking again and become independent. And she was strong. She did very well.
While in the hospital, I developed I guess you would call it a little mantra, or where I just, breathing in, I would say, I'm breathing in hope and faith. And breathe out fear and doubt.
She believed in herself, and she believed she could heal herself and do the right things to make her body whole and healthy again. She would never give up hope.
I don't know if it was a dream or a vision or what you want to call it, but Jesus appeared to me and told me I was going to be all right. And so from that moment on, I knew I was going to be okay. It was a belief or a knowing, just knowing something. It's hard to explain except to say that I just knew I was going to be okay.
Cheryl needed all that self-assuredness because her situation looked bleak.
It turned out to be a primary brain tumor, and the diagnosis was malignant astrocytoma versus glioblastoma, and both of those carry a very poor long-term prognosis.
After 2.5 weeks in the hospital, Cheryl returned to California to have her condition reviewed by local doctors. They gave her dire news.
It came back as the worst kind of brain tumor a person can have, stage 4. They go 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I, of course, had to have the 4. Got to go all the way if you're going to have one.
When she called me from California and said that her path had been reviewed for one more time and it was a glioblastoma, I knew that things were going to be, probably pretty short for her as far as survival was concerned.
He just told me basically that I should get my affairs in order because this is something that is very serious, and I mean the prognosis is 6 months to a year.
Doctors wanted Cheryl to undergo aggressive radiation and chemotherapy. Cheryl had serious reservations about doing so and decided against it.
Well, my belief was the chemotherapy would also wipe out my total immune system, and we have an immune system to fight off different, infections and stuff. So I just was against chemotherapy from the very beginning.
From her days as a professional basketball player, Cheryl knew that in order to have a chance to succeed, you had better be prepared. She would approach her cancer the same way.
I scoured medical libraries up at UCSF and read all I could on the impact of nutrition and how, it can really bulk up your immune system, make it strong, make it a fighter. I was just determined to beat this and to make it. If 10% make it to the 2-year mark, I definitely was going to be among those 10%. And if 1% only made it to the 5-year mark, I was definitely going to be one of those 1%.
Was struck unexpectedly by a brain tumor the size of her fist. Doctors had removed the mass, but now the woman who had spent her entire life as a competitive athlete would need to learn to walk again.
We lived only, 7 blocks from the ocean, basically, so I'd try to walk all the way down. First couple days I didn't. I got halfway and I was tired. But then when I started walking all the way to the ocean and just saw that view, it just lights me up inside. And so I started making that a daily walk.
It would not be enough just to redevelop her physical strength. Cheryl would increase her mental strength as well.
I was listening to a tape by a woman named Belle Ruth Napperstack, and it was titled For People with Cancer. But it was all about visualization of being healed, visualizing yourself in a healthy body.
Cheryl believed that victory over any tough opponent required a strong group of supporters with complementary skills.
Cheryl already walked in with a game plan, and she had organized a team.
In my basketball career, I realized how important teamwork is. Everybody working together and not just one being the star.
Cheryl first came in the fall of 1997 after she'd had surgery. She was very low energy, very, very pale, very fragile. In addition to the brain surgery, she'd had injury to her back. She had to be very, very careful how she moved. She had virtually, no real color in her face.
I did have some back pain associated with, the rods, the titanium rods in my back, and I found that the acupuncture really relieved that.
She responded very well and very quickly. She pinked up, she got more relaxed. She slept on her first treatment, which is a very good prognostication from my point of view, when people can really relax.
It's just such a non-invasive kind of procedure.
Acupuncture is a predictable description of the flow of energy in the body. When it's flowing freely, we experience a sense of well-being. When it starts getting congested or blocked, we would perceive it as pain. And if that pain were to persist, if that blockage were to persist over a long period of time, it could become more and more dense and lead to things like masses or growths.
With that idea in mind, much of the acupuncture treatment focused on redirecting energy flow properly to the area of Cheryl's tumor.
The brain is controlled by kidney energy, and kidney energy enters the body through the bottom of the feet. And there are many points in the feet and the bottom of the feet that actually are tumor points and kidney points that would control the kidney energy, the head.
You know, I'm not a doctor and I'm not an acupuncturist and I don't know, but I know I felt better. I felt good.
She gave it her all. Mind, body, spirit. Dietary changes, her point of view changed, her attitude changed, her involvement and commitment to living changed.
Cheryl's nutritionist created a diet free of sugar, most meats, and dairy. She ate a lot of fresh vegetables and began to incorporate dietary supplements to help boost her immune system. But despite her best efforts, Cheryl began to experience some very troublesome symptoms.
I started having some seizures. My arm would just go off and my leg went out from under me one day, and so I got worried. So I went to the hospital to find out what was wrong. They did a CAT scan and found that there were 2 cysts growing in my brain. Were filling with fluid, actually.
She had a high-grade malignant brain tumor that had recurred. Having it in the first place is bad. Having it recur is awful. She had no possibility of survival on a statistical basis.
She said, well, honey, I have a little bit of bad news. She said, I'm starting to get headaches, and I have to go and have some tests run because they think that the tumor might be growing again. And she was upset.
A little fear, sure, came in. Maybe this is it, you know. But when the doctor said, you know, go to the hospital and I'm going to operate on you tomorrow morning, I mean, I actually said, well, couldn't this just wait till over the weekend? He just said, no, you may be in a coma by Monday.
So surgeons again went inside Cheryl's brain. This time they drained the 2 cysts, but they also discovered some worrisome purple-colored cells. They decided to remove the affected tissue. Cheryl spent just 1 night in the hospital, and doctors felt confident that the operation was a success.
No more seizures, no more anything. They got rid of the problem.
Doctors warned that the likelihood of her brain cancer reappearing was high. Cheryl knew she had plenty of work left to do in order to get past this insidious foe.
Glioblastoma is almost uniformly fatal because it widely infiltrates the brain very rapidly.
Cheryl decided she'd use all weapons at her disposal, so she agreed to the doctor's recommended post-operative treatments.
I thought maybe this is a good time to do the radiation.
We treated the whole right side of her brain, all the way up to and a little bit over the midline of the brain, and made that the outline of what we wanted to treat on a daily basis. And that's how we deliver the treatment, on a daily basis. Once a day, 5 days a week. And in her case, she had about 5.5 weeks of that kind of treatment.
I did not stop my nutritional supplements. I continued to take those because I knew some of them would help protect my brain tissue while my brain was being radiated, and some other supplements that I read up on that how they deliver more oxygen to the tumor cells, which would make them more receptive to the radiation, suck it up like sponges, which would be great because then they suck it all up and then they're going to just die. The radiologist was not real keen on the idea of me continuing to take supplements while I was doing my radiation treatments. He'd like to see it stopped and then maybe resumed after the radiation was done.
I'm not a big supporter of alternative medicine, and whether she also benefited from alternative medication and diets and acupuncture and other things, I have absolutely no way of knowing.
But Cheryl had no doubt that her non-traditional approach was helping. And ultimately, even the doctor was impressed.
After all my treatments are done, he's a big fan of nutrition, and he's just, of course, very happy that I'm still here, you know, almost 10 years later.
She's alive and well and thriving, and whatever it was, it'd be fine with me if they share the credit.
Western medicine doesn't have all the answers. There's a lot to be learned from those people in the Far East.
Cheryl Clark has defied all the statistics. She is alive and well in a situation where 99.9% of patients with her disease would have been long dead. And in that, she is truly a miracle.
Her whole life has been like that. She's never let her life beat her down, and I don't think she ever could.
I really think she has an intense inner spirit, and I think that she was able to use that inner spirit to transcend her disease.
Radiation, nutrition, acupuncture, visualization, prayer, affirmation. It's a combination of all of those things that I did choose to do, why I'm still here today. I really believe in the power of your belief system and the effect on the body. Just choose what feels right to you. Just don't go blindly by what is prescribed or told to you to do, but feel good about those choices you're going to make. Don't be daunted by the statistics. After all, they're only statistics. You're an individual.
Cheryl Clark has always been compelled to express her individuality. She's never wanted to fit into someone else's definition of normal, and this attitude allowed her to blaze her own trail in life. It's also a big reason Cheryl was confident enough to take on her brain cancer on her own terms, ultimately conquering her most dangerous opponent.